In the heart of Geneva, where the cobbled streets resonate with the muffled sound of the footsteps of the world's elite, stands a luxurious restaurant, the Golden Crown. A true gastronomic institution, it is the scene of confidential meetings and quiet negotiations between diplomats, industrialists and financiers. Its crystal chandeliers diffuse a subdued light on tables draped with immaculate tablecloths, where whispers and promises are exchanged, where ambition and power intertwine. This is where Louis, an experienced but disillusioned waiter, has been serving for over 15 years. He knows every corner of the restaurant, every requirement of the regulars, every whim of an influential customer. However, over the years, he developed a certain bitterness. In his eyes, wealth is rarely synonymous with elegance and nobility. He has served loud-laughing ministers, scornful oligarchs, capricious celebrities. He knows how to recognize in an instant the arrogance of a man accustomed to being denied nothing, the hypocrisy of a smile thrown at the waiter between two strategic discussions. That evening, an anonymous reservation attracts the attention of the staff. A simple family name, common and impersonal, was left at reception. However, the requirement for an isolated table, out of sight, accompanied by precise instructions on the discretion of the service, intrigued Louis. When the customers finally arrive, silence briefly settles in the room. 3 men enter the restaurant with measured steps. The first, of imposing stature, has the haughty bearing of those who carry heavy burdens. He is dressed soberly, without ostentation, but everything about him betrays a certain authority. His straight posture, his piercing gaze, his serious and calculating air. His 2 attendants in dark suits are visibly his bodyguards. Nothing in their attitude is left to chance. They scan the room, evaluating each exit, each movement. Louis observes them in silence as he approaches the table. He is used to this type of customer. Those who seek both discretion and opulence, who do not like to be seen but demand to be served with the greatest attention.
Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the Golden Crown.
Would you like to start with an apéritif? The man in the center looks up slightly. His face, marked by the years, by decisions with serious consequences, seems strangely familiar to him. His Russian accent is barely concealed when he responds in a calm, almost detached voice.
A glass of vodka for me.
My colleagues will take the same thing. Louis nods, walks away, but a strange feeling passes through him. Where has he seen this man before? His mind searches through his memories, without success. When he returns with the glasses, he overhears a whispered discussion in the kitchen. It's crazy. Don't you think he looks like?
Don't talk nonsense. Let's see.
This guy would never come here without an army of men in suits.
Louis Franz.
Who are they talking about? A little later in the evening, while the service was in full swing, Louis was busy clearing a table next to that of the mysterious customers. He worked mechanically, placing plates and glasses on his tray while casting a few furtive glances at the man in the center and his 2 companions. Their calm attitude, their way of speaking with extreme economy of gestures, betrayed a habit of power. It was then that a few scraps of their conversation reached him. The tone was hushed, but the words resonated with gravity.
A question of influence.
Washington seeks to impose its vision, but Europe is divided. Strategic alliances are never set in stone. We must anticipate the slightest flaw, because the West underestimates our patience.
The war economy changes the balance of power.
Louis raised an eyebrow slightly. He was used to the social discussions of the regulars at La Couronne d'Or, businessmen discussing the stock market, diplomats weighing each word so as not to reveal anything of their dealings. But there, it was different. It was not a question of financial markets or luxury contracts, but of the balance of power between nations, latent conflicts and geopolitical strategies. An ironic smile stretched his lips. He couldn't help but feel contempt for these men he saw as architects of chaos, chess players disconnected from human realities. Without thinking, he blurted out, in a voice that was both weary and biting. Frankly, these Russian politicians, especially Putin, they think they're on top of the world, but they're just tyrants. One day, their entire empire will collapse.
A brutal silence fell over the room.
It was as if the air had suddenly thickened. Conversations at neighboring tables stopped abruptly. Worried looks were raised. Some customers instinctively looked down at their plates, as if to fade away from the moment. Louis heard one frisson glacial go up his spine. Silence like that was never a good sign. He had just time to see the slow, methodical movement of the man in the center, calmly resting his fork on the edge of his plate, delicately wiping his lips with his white napkin. Then he raised his head and stared into Louis's eyes.
A look of steel.
Cold.
Calculator.
A look that had seen power, war, fear, and who knew how to play with these elements. When he spoke, his voice was disturbingly soft. It's always fascinating to hear people's opinions, especially when they don't know who they're talking to.
Louis, blood freezes.
His heart pounded violently against his chest. Every fiber of his body screamed that he had just made an irreparable mistake. A glance to the left, another to the right. The two men in suits, until then almost motionless, had just sat up slightly in their chairs. Their posture changed subtly, stiffer, more tense. Their eyes met briefly, and Louis immediately understood that they were waiting for a signal. A cold sweat ran down his neck. He had just insulted Vladimir Putin. The president of Russia was sitting in front of him, in this cozy restaurant in Geneva, and Louis had spoken of him as a common dictator in decline.
The moment lasted an eternity.
Then, a hasty movement broke the tension.
The restaurant manager, livid, comes almost running.
His face, usually so controlled, was distorted by panicky fear. "Sir, please accept our most sincere apologies." He immediately turned to Louis, breathing short, his voice trembling with rage and terror. "Louis, you are fired immediately." Putin slowly raises his hand, a measured, almost theatrical gesture. The restaurant manager, who was about to drag Louis out of the room, instantly froze. His mouth remains ajar, as if the order he was about to give had just been swallowed by the silence. All eyes are on the Russian president. A heavy silence settles in, suffocatingly dense. Each second seems to stretch into infinity. Louis, frozen in place, feels his heart beating at a frantic pace. His instinct screams at him to apologize, to bow down, to try to blend into the background. But he also knows that it is already too late. He has crossed an invisible line. He has gone too far to turn back now. Putin's fingers tap gently on the immaculate tablecloth. Then, after an endless wait, his lips stretch into an enigmatic smile.
Your frankness is rare, young man.
Few people dare to speak like this in my presence. His voice is calm, almost soft. But behind this apparent tranquility, there is something else.
A cutting coldness. An implicit threat.
He tilts his head slightly, peering at Louis with suppressed curiosity. "Tell me, do you really think you can govern a country without a firm hand?"
Louis swallows.
He feels an icy wave run down his spine. He knows he has to weigh each of his words, but at the same time, a strange opportunity presents itself to him. He knows he should have slipped away, crashed, accepted his fault and disappeared. But something in him refuses. He takes a deep breath, then, despite the fear that tightens his throat, he chooses to speak. "With all due respect, sir, fear does not create respect.
It only forces it."
A shudder runs through the room. The restaurant manager pales more, as if he had just witnessed a live verbal suicide. A waiter drops a plate, which crashes to the ground with a crystalline crash. Putin doesn't move. His eyes, piercing like blades, remain riveted on Louis. For a moment, Louis believes he has signed his death warrant. But suddenly, a laugh breaks the silence.
A brief laugh. Dry.
But sincere.
Putin strikes lightly, amused.
"A man of principles," he pauses, assessing Louis with a hint of malice. "Rare in this industry. I like it." The breath of the room seems to return. Without another word, the president of Russia stands up, adjusting the sleeves of his suit with military precision. Slowly, he slides a generous note onto the table, a sum much higher than the price of dinner. He takes a few steps towards the exit, his bodyguards at his side, but stops just before entering the door. In a final movement, he turns his head slightly towards Louis. "You should be careful with your words, young man." A silence. His gaze lingers for a moment, then an imperceptible smile touches his lips. "But paradoxically, tonight, that's what saved you." And without waiting for a response, he disappears into the Geneva night. The restaurant remains frozen. The conversations, usually lively, do not resume. The customers exchange stunned looks. Some whisper, others nervously drink their wine, as if to dissipate the strange tension that still hangs in the air.
Louis, still in shock, remains standing in the middle of the room.
He doesn't know if he just escaped a disaster, or if he came close to something much more dangerous. But one thing is certain, he will never forget this night.